Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the LEGO Legend of Zelda Custom Set Showcase Wave 4, where today we're going to be taking a look at the biggest set of this wave in particular, and that is Z0066 with 1,213 pieces. I teased it previously, but this is indeed the Gerudo Fortress Infiltration, of course based off Ocarina of Time. So, here is our box art, and let's read some little information about this one before we dive straight into the packed interior, exterior and side builds of this really large set. In fact, it's the 5th largest in the custom set showcase so far, just knocking the Fire Sanctuary out of the top 5. It's rated for ages 10 and up with 1,213 pieces, retailing for £129.99 Great British pounds, containing 7 minifigures, 1 brick-built character and a horse. So, a little description about this set to give us a hint as to what's coming up over the next 70 renders or so. Enter the maze-like stronghold of the fierce Gerudo tribe in the all-new LEGO Legend of Zelda Gerudo Fortress Infiltration set. Don a disguise as Link and try to sneak past the guards using your trusty hookshot while searching for the fortress's treasure. Oh no, the carpenters have been captured, and it's up to you to find and free them. Watch out for the fierce warrior, or prove your skill to gain access to the secret trial and obtain the renowned ice arrows. Cook a hearty meal before setting out to try the archery course, or before raising the gate and venturing into the wilderness. So lots indeed going on here. And if we open up our box, we will find 9 numbered bags and 6 instruction manuals. Of course, LEGO making an effort to include build together, and you'll notice these instruction manuals aren't numbered, which is the current trend to show that despite the bags being numbered, you can build in any order you like. So, opening up our first manual, you can see this one is going to include bag 1. It's going to build the gate segment and include our first Gerudo guard. Next up, we have this manual with a couple of small builds inside it, and this is bag 2, including our horse, of course, Epona, reappearing from the Wave 2 set, or Wave 3 set, I should say, the Lon Lon Ranch Escape, and a Wave 2 set as well. And here it is, of course, the archery setup, and then a little room for the fortress. Then opening our third manual, you'll see we're building one smaller section here with 3 different levels. We're getting our Gerudo Guard number 2 in bag 3, as well as building some blockades and starting a structure, before finishing off the roof of said structure and including our build of a scarecrow in bag 4. Opening up our next manual, we can see this is the prison section. It includes our first of 2 carpenters in this set. The next manual is a big one, including 3 bags worth of building to build up the larger and taller structure, including Link with hookshot in bag 6, our second carpenter in bag 7, and bag 8 finishes off this penultimate structure with our Gerudo warrior. Then in bag 9 and manual 6, we're going to be building the last section, which includes the Gerudo Training Ground Keeper, and then also the build for the Gerudo Training Ground, of course the mini dungeon, where you get the ice arrows in Ocarina of Time. So here is the build all together, but let's spread some things out, and you can see there's sort of 3 distinct sections. We're going to start with the side builds as always. So this is the side build for the archery course that you find behind the fortress in game. You've got 2 targets here, of course, which you would shoot and get points. These were for quiver upgrades in the game, and you can see there's also some pots which you could also shoot with a bow, or maybe they just have some rupees inside. And then beyond that, we also have this target set up here, which of course, like you'd expect, can indeed be knocked down. So if we line them up like this, and you'll see that they flick backwards and fall down to the ground, meaning that you can shoot them with a bow. Now, how do you shoot them? The LEGO bow piece is static. Not anymore. The new inclusion of this bow in the Mako submarine set from the Avatar Way of Water line means that bow projectiles are now fireable, meaning that we can set up a course like this, and then Link can run down here, and actually you can flick fire off arrows into these targets and make them knock down, which is a fantastic addition, and one that I was kind of hoping would exist, and now well and truly it's here. So now we can imagine that being added to every custom set. Next up, we have the gate segment here, and this is built off the design of a segment where you enter into the desert. So you have to get the little card that says you're a member of the fortress and the Gerudo tribe before you can go on out. And you have this whole ladder here where you have to climb up and give it to the guard on the top. And that is represented here on the inside where there is a ladder. I decided to put it around the back just to make it look a little bit better. And that goes all the way up to the top. Big empty space, not much going on here. But we do have this mechanism here with a gear and a turning Technic axle, which of course raises up the gate so that you can pass out and into the fortress. This could be used to guard anything, and you'll see why later, because this fortress has an ace up its sleeve. But you've also got this little red flag up here showing the blowing wind, and this little area where of course you could put a guard to stand to look down upon the fortress, a nice little guard post build, adding a little bit of extra playability. Okay, so onto the big build, which of course is why you're here. So you can see that of course it's an open back build. Here it is from an angle from the right, and an angle from the left showing that there is a complete interior. And from the outside you'll see that there are a couple of different entrances into the fortress. And I've tried, if not to capture every single building, but to capture the rough shapes of what's going on in the fortress. So you see you do indeed have this indent in the middle, as well as the taller portions on the right, as well as the training ground. The one big change I did make was, instead of having the prison where Link gets captured fully embedded in a giant cliff wall, as you can see in the top left of this image, I have it as part of a tower build where it's partially submerged. But we'll take a look at that later, and I think it adds a really nice profile to the set. So before we touch on the build, I've got one more thing to slow us down, and that is of course these barricades, which Link can of course hide behind, and the guards patrol around, meaning that you can sort of like be sneaky. It's just an added bit of extra stealth, and also they can be removed from the main fortress build to be used in the archery competition. So over here on the left you can see that there's one of many doors into the fortress. There's one on the ground floor level here. There's one over in the indent in the middle, just like you'd find in the real fortress, between windows. And then of course there's this sealed door here, which is to the training ground section, where of course you'd obtain the ice arrows, and this door can indeed slide open because you have to prove that you're a member of the tribe to be allowed entrance. And that you can see that here, and this is actually why our Gerudo training ground officer is included, because she's the one that will let you in. She could also be the one that's helping you raise the gate. And one thing you'll notice about these customs this time around is that there's no more inclusion of custom stickers in the set. I'll be pointing them out as we go through, and that is purely because Studio's rendering has changed and I can no longer include custom pieces in renders. So this red tile above the door would of course have the newer Gerudo symbol, of course not the one that was referencing Islam, of course the newer one, which is a completely made up symbol for the Zelda universe. But going back through, we can see we've got this taller tower here, where there of course is another entrance, a second floor entrance into the fortress, and you've also got this section of vines where you can climb up, which is actually accurate to the game, just in a slightly different spot, where vines can help you traverse and sneak around to different rooms to access all the carpenters. Of course, we've only got one jail cell included in this because it's a playset designed to maximise space. However, one thing I did want to include is yet another reuse of the golden snail piece, it's not a snail, spider, that appeared in the Escape Lon Lon Ranch custom, and that's making a reappearance here, just to be another thing for Link to find across the fortress is a golden skull Tula. And then on the top we have another flag. You've noticed I've left a lot of areas, and there's quite an interesting footprint to this building, meaning there's lots of space for Link to run into guards, or for guards to be positioned, or for you to have little battles and stuff, because the inside could be seen as a little bit cramped. Over on the left hand side we've got a couple more details to look at on the outside. That begins with of course good old Pierre, which is a scarecrow which is summoned by a song, and of course you hookshot to, and the hookshot is a big part of the play loop in this set, meaning that I wanted to include him, and he can indeed be hookshotted too. He also looks absolutely fantastic. We'll take a closer look at him later. But here you can see that Pierre is the reason you can get to this treasure chest here, which is sat on this final roof, and when opened you will indeed find a heart piece inside, as per of course the real game. Nice to include this part again. Then on the very, very left we have the prison section, which you can see is sort of built into the rockwork, represented using the medium nougat bricks at the bottom, but then the Gerudo tower is sort of coming out of the top, and I think it just adds a little bit more colour and a little bit more like different shaping to the build, so I'm really glad to have been able to add it instead of just building it into a massive wall, which I think would have also looked very ugly for a build like this. But the prison of course is iconic, so I wanted to include it, especially where Link gets a lot locked away. So as you can see, it's an open back build, lots and lots of details to take a look at. So I'm going to reveal this set's customs ace, and then we can take a look at why there are so many interiors. Now, the thing about this set is it is indeed removable and rearrangeable, meaning you can do your own custom layouts, which I'll be showing you at the end of this video, and then of course like sort of rearrange the different rooms to make different layout fortresses and just make it look the way you want to look. Now, the rooms are all lined up to sort of work the best with the traditional layout, but including this as an option doesn't really harm anyone, and also it just makes things easier to transport, but also to build in different sections. So we're going to take a look at the sections one by one, and that should make the interiors a little bit easier to understand. So starting off, this is one of the segments here with the scarecrow on the top and the heart piece. A couple of different elevated rooms making a really interesting profile from the front, but makes interiors particularly difficult. So a lot of empty space in this one. It's actually based off one of the corridors where there are lots of barrels and things that you can sneak through. And you can see down from this angle we've got a variety of different shaped obstacles to hide behind or for Link to break open. There's some bottles and some crates. There's a big barrel for him to hide in. And then if we look up, you can see there's some pots to smash on a shelf. How do you reach that shelf, you ask? Well, that's where our hookshot comes in. So the play loop here is you to come along, you'd get your hookshot, which maybe is unlocked from the chest and the roof or somewhere else in the build. Maybe the carpenters give it to you, or you just come equipped with it. And the idea is that you would shoot it and grapple onto this bar. There's a couple of these bars hanging throughout the set, and then Link could sort of dangle from that. Or he could hide in the barrel as well, and by hookshotting up to different places, you can reach different doors, different angles, you can smash pots, reach hidden areas. So that's the idea behind the hookshot in this set. Moving on to the next room though, this one's the ugly one. This is sort of defined as an inverted connector to sort of almost hide behind other sections to join bits together, and it works fine for that job. It just means it looks a little bit ugly for it on its own. However, on the inside you can see we've got a red carpet running through, which is something that is seen in some of the Gerudo hallways. A couple of different weapon racks to help get weapon and give weapons for your Gerudos, so just some extra things. They also act as things to hide behind. You've got a little torch in the corner, and my favourite detail is the representation of these skull and crossbones with the giant red wings, which is something that's seen all over the fortress in the rooms where you can shoot them with arrows to get extra bombs and stuff, but you can also see them in the dining room and things. I didn't want to include them in every single room because it takes up a lot of space in Lego forms, so I included one here in the hallway where there was a big amount of empty space to put it in, but I think it looks fantastic. Then moving into the big section, this is the only one with a two-story interior. Starting on the ground floor, you can see we have the kitchen and dining room. This is a real location you can see in the game. You can see the table off to the right. I did not include the raised section, which is how you sneak across it, but there's a big cooking pot off to the right, and you can see a skull representation on the wall as well. But looking in here, of course, you can see we've got a big cooking pot in a brick fire, along with some big flames showing that it's roasting away. You've also got a container, maybe for some food elements, or maybe again, that's where the hookshot could be stored. And on the board, you can see a 2x3 tile, which just has appeared in other sets, like the Yiga Clan Attacks, this would be a recipe sheet from Breath of the Wild. Yes, I know, not strictly canon to Ocarina of Time, but this would be a recipe sheet for vegetable rice balls, as I thought it was a fitting inclusion to just include these recipe tiles across a whole wave, and I'd love to see a whole collection of them in sets. You've also got this table with some pots and some plates on here for either some soup bowls or some plates for the Regivice bowls, and you've got actually 6 seats around here, and although there are only 4 Gerudo figures included in this set, we also have Noboru from the Series 1 of the collectible series, and of course Link could also sit with them after he's passed the Gerudo test and be a member of the club, or maybe this is where they feed their prisoners, or just buying a second copy to have more Gerudo guards. And then on the second floor, we actually have the prison section for one of your carpenters, or both of your carpenters, to lock them away and lock them up for their bad behaviour. So you can see again, there's a blue tile here, just like you would find in the real room, above the door, and you've also got the bars and the door which can open and of course close. So here you can see that the door is now open, allowing people to be put in there. You could put a guard in the hallway, and you could fight the Gerudo warrior here like you do in the game. But seeing around the back, you've got this giant wall full of fences to block it off so that of course no one can escape from this prison. But above we have yet another non-game detail. Now this is from Majora's Mask, referencing the Gerudo pirates in that game's hatred of bees and how you knock down hives to sort of upset them. Now it means no real sense to knock them down into the poor carpenters. They really are having bad luck, but I really wanted to include the beehive piece here somewhere, and I thought that here was a good inclusion given how tall the ceiling was. So here you have it. There are beehives here referencing Majora's Mask Pirate Fortress. However, of course, there is a breakout feature. I couldn't do a prison cell without one. So you can see a red actuator lever on the right-hand side, and by pushing and turning that, you'll knock the whole wall off, revealing the cell, where you can see we have a little prison bed, nice and uncomfortable, a little chamber pot for urination, of course, but also could just be a pot for Link to smash, and you've got their saw in a little container. Not sure why they'd leave it in the cell, but again, they're carpenters. I wanted to include it in this set. And there's from a different angle, you can see there's nothing under the bed, no escape feature in another way, just a removable wall here. This I suppose is a good time as any to mention that of course you would get the rupee pack, which I designed with my custom sets, that works just like the superhero power-up pieces, where you get a selection of 8 rupees, 3 green, 3 blue and 2 red in a set, and you can put these across all the different pots and containers throughout the set, meaning that there are rupees for Link to find inside the pots, along with these other goodies. Moving over to the furthest and most leftmost section, we have the tower embedded in the rock, and you can sort of see what I mean, where I tried to hybridize the original design while still keeping the open area for escape. You can see again, very tall build with not much going on. You've got another brown pole, which is of course used for hook shots, and then some little skeleton parts and a spider web with a spider on it. Once again, another locked door, which of course can open and close and open again. This is of course where they would throw Link when he's unconscious. And then on the inside you can see that once again there's space for him to hookshot out by sort of hookshotting up onto the bar, grabbing onto the bar, and then hookshotting out up to the top here, where you've got a couple of different studs for him to stand and then of course jump out the window, or maybe this is even spots for you to put another Gerudo guard at the top if you wanted the fortress to seem more impregnable. Now, over on the far right, we have the Gerudo Training Ground section, which is sort of the section that you have access to towards the end of the game, where you undergo a series of challenges to get the ice arrows. Now, this version is nearly not as complicated. There's a little entrance section for you to stand, and then a small parkour challenge over some lava in order to get this blue rock. This blue rock is a placeholder piece designed to represent the ice arrows. However, now that we have the bow from the Mako submarine set, this would probably literally be a container containing the arrow pieces for that bow, like the spares, so that you could shoot more than one in trans blue, which coincidentally is the only colour that those pieces come in. This rock actually to me looks more like a moon tier, which I already made a custom piece for. But you've got some platforms sort of inspired by a Mario set where you can just jump between them, avoid the fire, and then get the representation of the ice arrows. However, it was supposed to be nice and simple. It was just to fill a nice small space, and I think it does the job really well for such a little small location. Okay, so I realise it's very confusing when we put all the rooms together, so I'm going to try and show you how they'd all connect in the fortress's default form. So here you can see Link's prison off to the far right, and how that jail cell opens into the end of one of the corridors with all the barrels. Then that corridor sort of turns a corner by the barrel, and then you go into a more fancy corridor, which is sort of like the entranceway with the weapon racks, which leads in on the very right there to the dining room, which sort of turns the corner and goes into the training ground, which explains why we have that little entranceway where the sliding door, so that you weren't just like faced immediately with lava and then like there's lava seeping into the dining room. You know, you've got to have some cartoon style logic in these sets. However, I mentioned that this could be rearranged. So here was the default arrangement, where you've got the gate in the correct position to go off into the wastelands, you've got the archery course behind, and the building's laid out exactly how I originally intended. However, just as an example, here's an opportunity to rearrange it. You can see this one was based off more of a right angle with the prison over on the far right. It's definitely forming more of like a 90-degree thing with the prison cell off on the far right, or the gate I should say, to lead off to the archery course, which is sort of locked behind a barrier for some reason. But either way, the option to even rearrange this stuff is just completely unnecessary, but definitely most welcome. So that's actually going to finish off looking at the build. Let's take a quick look at the figures now. But before we do that, of course, I have to add it to our box lineup. You can see we are now up to 6 customs for this wave, including Take Back the Sea and the Arbiter's Ground Dungeon expansion. You can see it's certainly joint biggest box with Take Back the Sea, which surprisingly ended up being the biggest, although it's debatable whether Take Back the Sea is part of wave 4 or not. I think it is canonically, although to me, Gerudo Fortress Infiltration was always the planned biggest set for this wave, despite Take Back the Sea being even bigger. However, that's besides the point. Yet another set to add to our lineup with our lovely new green boxes. I'm really liking how the wave's shaping up. First figure, of course, is the aforementioned titular Link. You cannot have a custom without him, except for you can. He is, of course, in the non-Ocarina Desert Divide outfit. Now, I know, it's criminal. It's criminal behaviour. We've only had a couple of sets with adult Link, and I didn't want to repeat another outfit, especially when there are so many unique desert ones that we could cover. So here it is with the Desert Vibe uniform, which of course you can see next to the reference. We're of course using the existing bandana piece and a new hair hat combo to represent the veil. Some basic printing all across the body and some dual molded legs. I think he looks fantastic. Using one of the existing headpieces we already have for him, as most of it's covered up anyway. Then moving on to his accessory, of course, is the hookshot. This is a big part of this set. Just a simple build, maybe a little bit longer than it should be, but I really wanted to include that little pointy arrow piece. Potentially this could have been done with the pyramid piece. We'll have to try around with that, mess around with that in the future. However, here it is using some blue studs and then a silver one in the middle to represent the chain. Then moving into the carpenters, we have Jiro the carpenter here, who is using the afro piece recoloured in dark brown. It's really hard to find hair pieces for these guys, but I used the nearest representative piece. Also, the designs are horrifically unminifigure-like, so it was my job to try and use a bit of creative license and turn their heads into something viable. This one is screaming and running away, and his reverse expression would just be the same eyes closed expression but with a more passive look on his face. He's got his green legs with his white printing, and then his shirtless, like, I don't know what you'd call it, like sort of open shirt down the middle with some of his muscles and his protruding stomach. His partner is here, Saburo, making 2 of the 4 carpenters, only 2 included in the set, using some grey legs, very similar style, still with the blue one, and I thought the Zane hairpiece fitted the most for his more subdued hairstyle. He is in a little bit more panic, maybe he's seen a warrior sneaking up on Link, or maybe he's about to run away, and he'd have no reverse headprint because, of course, the mullet does not cover up anything that would be there. Then moving into the Gerudo themselves, we have the training grounds keeper, who is of course the one that operates the gate, but also the training grounds to get the ice arrows. You can see here this is based off the design with the red hair. I chose to use one of the newer hair pieces. I believe this was Soldier 76's hair from the Overwatch line. You can see we're using one of the newer flesh skin tones to try and get somewhere in between. I tried to add a little bit of variation between the different members of the tribe. We've got the sort of like vest printing over the top of the torso, and then the raggedy baggy trousers before some purple shoes down at the bottom, and she's smiling. I found her face particularly hard to capture. Then we have the Gerudo warriors, of course the ones that actually attack you outside the carpenter's cells. He's dual wielding just like in the game, has the dark red top, the exposed stomach, and then of course the baggy red pants, using the same bandana piece as the Link but this time unprinted, and the Unagami hair from Ninjago recoloured in red and gold just like I did for Naburu. She has also got the double swords, but beyond that it's a nice simple figure that looks pretty accurate to the game. Then we have the 2 guards, both of which are using different hair pieces. This one here is using the Cave Woman hairpiece from series 5, I want to say, with an arrow piece embedded where the bone would be to sort of represent the done-up hairstyle with the big spiky bar through the middle. It's got the large spear made out of 3 pieces, 2 in gold and then 1 in a silvery colour. Again, has got the purple top with the red accents, the dark brown like sort of leg printing, and then the golden, the silver strips before the purple shoes. Again, a simple figure which actually shares its legs and torso with the second Gerudo guard, using a different hairstyle here just to add some variation to the troops. Spear's exactly the same, just held in a different way, both using a bandana pieces as mentioned. Same facial expression most likely, but this one is using the waitress hair from series 11 with the curl at the front. Okay, and that brings us on through all the figures to Pierre, who of course is our build for our Scarecrow. I promise I'll just show you a side-by-side. You can see here, he's pretty much as close as you can get with existing pieces. I love the use of the macaroni elements for his arms, and of course he's using a big Technic wheel for the middle of his head. But that is all of our figures. One quick side-by-side comparison. You can see there's definitely been an improvement since I did Naburu back in Wave 1. I will be returning to her to try and make her look a little bit bigger and better, and she was also using the old eyes, so she looks a little bit sinister. I was still overall happy with her. Here she is next to the other Gerudo. This is all of our Ocarina of Time Gerudo tribe now, which is 5, and pretty much as big as it's going to get, I think. Apart from a redo of Naburu, I think Breath of the Wild's Gerudo are probably more interesting and more varied for us to take a look at in the future. So that is actually going to do it for the entire set, Z0066, not 57 as the box says, Gerudo Fortress Infiltration. One of the better ones I've done in a while, I feel. Like, there's a lot here, it looks great and has some fantastic interior details, a great minifigure lineup. It really does surprisingly make me want to go back and redo Naburu as a figure, because I feel like she deserves it now. She just looks so out of date compared to the others. Definitely soon we're going to be revisiting those and giving them the proper upgrades that we love for sure. But let me know what you thought of this, what your favourite detail was, and of course just general thoughts about this custom down below in the comments, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.